many of us bought a guitar because we thought it would change our lives, make us a rock star, get us the girl, or at least rack up some likes on Instagram? But here's the question no one wants to ask out loud. Is the guitar industry actually selling tone or just selling dreams? Let's break this down before your next impulse buy lands you in a pile of unopened guitar catalogs and broken promises. Number one, the myth of the one guitar that will change everything. Every guitarist thinks the next guitar will be the one. But at this point, your collection looks more like a dating history than a toolkit. All right, look, I'm guilty. You got me. Yes, everybody that watches this channel knows I've got tons of guitars, and I've bought tons of guitars over the years. And my only excuse is being in the music business for 40 years. And, after 40 years, you do tend to collect some stuff. Some of these back behind me I can't part with for sentimental reasons, or they were gifts that meant, something to me and all that. And others were just, just like this video is going to tell you. I thought, I can imagine what I would play on the instrument. Sometimes you look at a guitar online and you imagine what you would sound like, and thinking that, being a Strat player, and then all of a sudden, well, what about Les Pauls? Or being a Les Paul player and trying out a Telecaster. Or, for me, later in life, getting into SGs. It's just a thing, man. You know what? And I think us older players are realizing, that, hey, you know what? I'm not going to get some amazing gig out of this. This is a tool. If I can make some money out of this tool, if I can use it to play a few gigs or whatever, then, so be it. But I don't think, once you get older, I'm not sure that we think that we're going to become rock stars, or that we're going to get the girl, or yes, we might get a few social media points. But, I think maybe, again, getting back to selling dreams, many of us had dreams of stardom, of, being on the big stage and all that. And, you know what? In some ways, by purchasing a guitar, you're keeping that dream alive, even if it's long past its expiration date. That holy grail guitar you keep chasing, turns out Excalibur didn't come with locking tuners either. You're not on a tone quest. You're starring in your own Netflix series called Strat Catfish. We often emotionally invest in gear as problem solvers instead of skills. You think that you're going to be a great country player if you buy a Telecaster. You think you're going to be Corey Wong if you buy a Corey Wong Strat. And the reality is, the chops and the playing and the instrument are completely separate, right? What you put into playing guitar is exactly what you get out. If you want to play like Corey Wong, then you're going to have to practice like Corey Wong. If you're going to want to play country guitar, you're going to have to put in the effort and learn the licks and learn the tricks and do all the things that it takes to be that player. No magic guitar is going to make you anything. Number two, marketing versus musicianship. They're not selling you a guitar. They're selling you the idea that Hendrix would want you to have it, or Jeff Beck would want you to have it, or Jimmy Page would want you to have it. If tone really lived in the fingers, ad copy wouldn't be in 4K. Ad says inspired by legends. It means you'll pay legend level prices to sound like you. And that's the reality. You could go today and you could spend $10,000 on a Murphy Lab Les Paul, and they are, cool guitars, right? Wouldn't mind having one myself. But the reality is you spent $10,000 on a Murphy Lab Les Paul. You're still going to sound like yourself, on a $10,000 Murphy Lab Les Paul. You'll start to notice, right? These days, budget guitars are better than ever, right? They're really good guitars that I wouldn't have any problem gigging with, right? You start to notice the higher up in price you get, that it's diminishing returns, right? Is that Murphy Lab guitar that's $10K, is it any better than the $27.99 Les Paul Standard or whatever they're going for these days? You know what? You'll find that visually, yes, they may be vastly different. Feel-wise, they could be different depending on neck profile and all of those different things. Tone-wise, they could be different due to the pickups and stuff like that. But look, these days when you can get an Epiphone guitar with custom buckers in it, the distance between an expensive guitar and an inexpensive guitar is diminishing returns. There's very little difference. Now look, this whole time I've had Ace in my shoulder and he's clamoring. He wouldn't let me do a video today without him in it. So he's going to join me for the rest of the ride in the camera so you can see him. Number 3, signature models and limited editions, fantasy or function. When you buy a $3,000 reissue, suddenly you too can almost play like a guy who used to gig in bell bottoms. It's not a guitar. It's a $2,000 permission slip to daydream at practice. Limited edition means unlimited expectations and very limited results, right? All of these things are very true. Here's the deal, man. A lot of companies are guilty of this. They're selling you something that guys in bell bottoms used to play. That's the reality. A lot of the major U.S. Guitar companies and the big two is Gibson and Fender. Gibson and Fender is largely selling you the dreams and vision and sound of the past, right? And look, maybe that's a very real thing because there aren't bands that are really taking it, to the next direction that are mainstream, right? A lot of people are still going around listening to Led Zeppelin. A lot of people are still going around listening to Van Halen. A lot of people are still going around listening to Aerosmith, right? At least for us older guys, right? And look, you could say the same thing about Tim Henson, who I'm sure, without even doing a look, I'm sure his signature models are some of the best selling guitars, right? But here's the deal. It's business playing signature guitars. And me as a person who wanted to be an artist, who wanted to be his own rock star, back when I was a kid, I always felt a little weird about playing a signature model. Shouldn't I be playing my own signature model? Shouldn't I be creating something with my own guitar and creating legends with just this nondescript, off-the-rack guitar? That's the reality. Many of the signature models that you're seeing today on the market are like the Corey Wong Strat. Wasn't that a Highway 1 Strat or whatever that he had pulled off the wall? And now that's his signature model, and they designed it after that. The same thing could be said for a Les Paul. Those guitars were sitting in pawn shops and stuff. There was a period there where they weren't very popular guitars, and they just happened to be picked up and played by musicians who created legendary music. Right? But in the grand scheme of things, a stock 1960s Strat or a vintage styled Les Paul is a very antiquated instrument, right? They're not the easiest instruments to play. Now, you can get some legendary tones out of them, but I can't exactly say that those tones, right, will carry you into the next dimension, right? They're more likely to blast you back in the past. Number 4, the rise of gear addiction. G.A.S, gear acquisition syndrome. You can't buy time in the woodshed, but you can buy another fuzz pedal that sounds just like your last one. And that's the reality, man. There's so many options today for players. It could be an endless collection. And many people, look, there could be a lot of people that are, working regular jobs, right? Because here's the deal, even though I have a decent amount of stuff, man, it pales into comparison to somebody that actually, had worked a regular job with a steady paycheck, right? The reality is, man, it takes money to buy all this stuff, but it doesn't make you a better player, right? And I get it. If you want to collect guitars, man, I think it's the coolest thing in the world. If you want to have an amazing pedal collection, man, go for it. I think it's much cooler than collecting action figures at the age of 40, right? It's definitely ups your cool factor a little bit, but it can get out of hand, right? Because especially if you're a real player, man, if you're actually playing gigs, you do need a Strat. You do need a Telly. You do need a Les Paul. And I'm guilty of this, man. Trying so many different things. Look, I've sold more guitars than I've ever owned, right? And that's the reality of trying to play music for a living, right? You don't get to hold on to everything. Heck, I sold a couple of guitars last month, but here's the deal. When you buy all this stuff, your tone didn't improve. Your credit score just went down in stereo. You're not building a rig. You're assembling a shrine to indecision, right? The constant psychological trap of constantly upgrading, right? That's the reality, man. We're all searching for something. We're searching for tone. I've heard, people say, I'm on a tone search. I'm searching for tone. And the reality is G.A.S, gear acquisition syndrome, is a byproduct of a consumer-driven scene, right? There's always something new coming out. I'd say, man, it seems like every 2 or 3 months, a new product comes out, right? And some of them are absolutely amazing, and some of them are demoed by players that are absolutely amazing and can make anything sound good. That's the reality of all this. The industry benefits from never letting players feel complete, right? Here's the deal, man. And I'll talk about PRS, right? PRS is always improving their designs. They're always changing them. Gibson and Fender, they do a little bit of this, but it seems like PRS is always trying to upgrade what they're giving, right? So I can understand if you've got a 2019 PRS and all of a sudden they tell you these new pickups are the ones, these new tuners, we've added this, we've added that. Man, it can be difficult to, keep temptation at bay. And number 5, social media and the dream machine. If tone lives in the fingers, why do we spend so much time filming the gear instead of the playing? I think a lot of demo guys, I think there's a fine line, right? Because I know there's certain players that can make anything sound good, right? And a lot of them I watch. And then there's some players that can't make the $10,000 guitar sound good. And there's a medium area there where I kind of like to reside, right? Because, people want to hear the gear. They don't always want to hear how great a player you are. And demoing gear, there's a fine line there. You obviously want to play as well as you can. But you also don't want to play so well that you intimidate people and go, well, I'll never sound like that. So you know what? Social media, it feeds the dream machine, right? Your feed's tight. Your fretting hand, not so much. All kinds of stuff on social media that feed this. Companies chop up their demo videos from YouTube and they share them on Instagram and TikTok and all that stuff. You know, Instagram has made stars out of pedal boards and background plants. Music optional, right? Here's the deal. The look versus play culture. Aesthetics override artistry, right? Here's the deal, man. You could assemble a pedal board with the most plain looking pedals that you could find. Just generic, Boss, anything that's just plain looking, right? But for that ooh and ah and that wow factor, man, people focus on certain brands or certain pedals with a cool graphic on it. And here's the deal, man. If you take a picture of a pedal board and it's just a bunch of Boss pedals slapped together, right? It's not going to get many likes. But if you've got all the pedals with all the cool brand names and cool graphics and all that stuff, all of a sudden the thumbs up go crazy. That's the reality of all of this. The guy with the basic slapped together pedal board might actually have better tone. We can't deny the influence of influencers, right? Curated practice spaces and boutique overload. That is a huge part of social media and the dream machine. But wait, are dreams always bad? Sure, they're selling dreams, but sometimes that dream is what keeps us from giving up the gig. I believe wholeheartedly that there is a song in every guitar. Now, whether you can bring that song out, that's up to you. That's the reality of all this. But they really are selling dreams, and it's not such a bad dream after all. Playing music is a positive thing, right? Creating art is a positive thing. Filling the air with sound, as long as you're not annoying the hell out of your neighbor, is a cool thing, right? And look, every great riff started with a daydream and a dangerously thin wallet. So remember that, right? You know what? Don't ever lose that eye of the tiger, right? If you do have 50 guitars, make sure you play them. Make sure you practice, right? Because after all, that's what's most important. The industry may sell illusions, but you still have to put in the hours to turn fantasy into fingers. So is the guitar industry just selling dreams? Maybe. But maybe that's not the worst thing. Dreams got us started, and sometimes they keep us going. Just make sure the next time you reach for your wallet, it's to chase a sound, not a fantasy. Because let's face it, no guitar is going to do the work for you, but the right one just might make you believe you can.